Have you ever run into someone you haven't seen in forever? Like totally out of the blue?
Oh, yeah.
And it just kind of throws you for a loop. Well, that's what we're looking at today.
Okay.
Our source material is this really interesting conversation between these two people, Alex and Sarah.
Okay.
And they just randomly bump into each other at a park after something like 7 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So, think about someone you haven't seen in ages. Like, that's the feeling we're going for here.
Yeah, I gotcha.
We really want to get into, like, what happens in those moments when you reconnect with someone unexpectedly and how that kind of sheds light on how both you and that connection have changed over time.
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So right off the bat, what really jumps out at me in this conversation is just like the pure surprise.
Right.
It's like, Sarah, wow. And then she's like, Alex? I don't believe it.
It's so genuine.
It's so genuine, right? And it just goes to show how even after all that time, there's still this connection. Like they haven't completely faded from each other's memories.
It's exactly like you said, it's pure surprise after all these years. And I think it underscores just how much certain people really stick with us.
Yeah.
Even when life takes us in different directions.
Yeah, it's like running into a piece of your past.
Yeah.
That you thought was gone.
Exactly.
But it comes back and it's so vivid.
Mm-hmm.
And then right after that initial shock, it's like they go into this automatic catching up mode.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's all, how have you been? And wow, you look great.
You look great.
It's like this universal ritual.
It is.
To kind of reestablish that connection,
Right, like our brains just automatically go to these social scripts.
Totally. It's like social software kicking back in.
Exactly.
So as they're catching up, their conversation naturally shifts to talking about their jobs, which I think a lot of us can relate to.
Oh, yeah.
When you haven't seen someone in a while, it's like, what have you been up to?
Totally.
And work is such a big part of our lives.
It is.
So we find out Sarah actually transitioned to freelance consulting like 2 years ago, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And then Alex mentions that he just started a new finance job within the last year because he wanted like better hours and better pay.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, who doesn't, right? But it's fascinating to see how these little updates about their work lives give us these clues about their priorities.
Right.
Like for Sarah, maybe it's about having more independence and control.
Absolutely.
While Alex seems to be more focused on work-life balance.
Yeah, and, Sarah's move kind of reflects this bigger trend we're seeing as people wanting more flexibility and autonomy in their careers.
Oh, for sure.
And Alex's reason, better hours, better pay, that gets at this core of what drives so many career decisions.
Absolutely. It makes you think about all the factors that people weigh when making those kinds of changes.
Yeah, totally.
Now, what really got me was when they start talking about how they lost touch.
Oh, yeah.
They both say something along the lines of, I've thought about reaching out so many times, but then life just gets in the way.
It's so true.
I know, right? It's like that universal experience of good intentions getting derailed by the chaos of everyday life.
It happens to the best of us.
Exactly.
It's so relatable.
But you know what I found really heartwarming is that this wasn't some like sad or awkward reunion.
I agree.
There was this genuine warmth between them. You can just tell they were both happy to have run into each other.
Absolutely.
And they definitely wanted to pick up where they left off.
Right. It wasn't just oh, hey, good to see you, and move on.
Exactly.
There was this clear desire to reconnect.
So true.
Yeah. And when Sarah suggests, let's actually catch up properly, it's not just being polite.
No.
She even throws out specific ideas like coffee or lunch.
Right. And Alex is immediately on board.
Totally.
And they even make plans to text that weekend to figure out the details. It's like there's real intention there.
It's not just reminiscing for a few minutes and then saying goodbye.
It's about actively rebuilding that connection.
That's what makes it so interesting.
I think that's a huge takeaway here. The chance meeting is just the initial spark,
Right.
But the real work is in making the effort to actually reconnect.
It's taking that spark and turning it into something more.
It's about being intentional and actually following through.
Absolutely.
And it's so clear from their closing remarks how genuinely happy they are to have seen each other.
You can tell they're looking forward to hanging out again.
It's like even after all those years apart, that shared history and those positive memories create the strong foundation for building a new connection.
Totally.
So what we can learn from Alex and Sarah's story is that these unexpected reunions, they can be so much more than just nostalgic trips down memory lane.
For sure.
They're like these little windows into how people's lives have unfolded, and they remind us that even though life can lead us in different directions, those meaningful connections can be rekindled.
Exactly. And it often happens when we least expect it.
It's like this reminder that even though we change and our lives change,
Right.
the possibility of reconnecting with people from our past is always there.
And sometimes those chance encounters can be the catalyst for something really special.
Totally.
Pretty cool when you think about it.
So for all of you listening, think about someone you've lost touch with but have been meaning to reach out to.
Yeah,
What do you think they've been up to all this time?
I like that.
And more importantly, if you really want to reconnect, what's one small step you can take to make that happen?
That's a great question.
Just something to think about.
I love it.
All right, that's all for today's deep dive.
Awesome.
We'll catch you next time.
Sounds good.